Well, gang, where's the Churchill Factor? It was not a book I was reading. I thought I'm revisiting we'll say a modern classic in the sense that it sort of hit like a bombshell. Forgive the pronunciation. Timur Vermes or Vermes, Look Who's Back, or to give it its German title, and again bear with me, ist Wieder da. So many reviews in the front, including a Warrior's disturbing book. That's part of the quote from the Daily Express. It caused immense controversy when it came out, if I remember rightly. And I rented it from the library, and then I brought this from Waterstones. And the lady in Waterstones said, "What's it like? It looks, you know." And I said, "Well, it's what it is. It means what it is," as Patrick McGoon once said in the prison. I'm controversial because you see the basic plot is Adolf Hitler has somehow come back from the dead. He wakes up on what is barren wasteland, and the Führer bunker is now under a car park, so I assume he woke up on the car park, unless the author took a creative license and said, you know, they demolished the Führer bunker and he just woke up on it. He wakes up in 2011. Now, though it's not the primary concern in this novel, Hitler seems to have, Hitler's recollection goes up to him sitting in his room with Eva Braun's, or Frau Hitler, as she insisted, on the last 36 hours of her life, or 29, showing her his gun, and that's not a, you know, he was showing her his gun, and then he didn't remember anything and he wakes up with Hedda. So there's no implication with this Hitler that he was actually going to commit suicide. There's a passage, a couple of pages before what I've just read, where he's looking up himself on the internet like you do, and they say Hitler, and he said Hitler's suicide was not my intention. I've read enough books about...
Winds of McGabbery, how some of them...
Standby. I've read enough books and seen enough things to know that Hitler firmly intended to shoot himself when he did so. I mean, he said all was lost. And also he wakes up smelling the petrol. So clearly they've gone through it. You get past that. Very swift. The story snowballs. I mean, the whole idea of this story is a satire, really. So it's not really a historical piece where, you know, Hitler gets taken away and prosecuted. He very quickly grasps that he's in the future, as he would know it. Turks are everywhere, apparently. Berlin is unrecognisable to what he last saw it. I mean, he's making all these references about bombed out ruin. I mean, after January 1945, Hitler didn't really leave the bunker complex. He'd only have seen the gardens, I would have thought, where he ultimately was burnt. So, perhaps, I don't know. Little things. When you're a historian, I guess it's not a good idea to read this book. I say historian by education. So, he's befriended really by a newspaper vendor who lets him sleep in the kiosk, and he gets his uniform cleaned by the local cleaners who are Turks, and they have a little argument. But from the off, it is Hitler. You know, the author's done very well to capture the prejudices and the thought pattern and how he phrases things and how he writes it, and you can sort of, where is it? Well, he says that the youth is the future when he talks to these German kids. And there's stuff about the Jews, and he even mentions a joke about the gas chambers or some such, and he's looking for the others of the Führer staff, but they're all dead, of course. And that in itself, I think, would have been intriguing. If I'd been writing this, I would have been far too tempted to say, halfway through the book, have Goebbels magically reappear, also from the Führer bunker, because he too had his body burnt there, although, unlike Hitler's, his body was partially destroyed because they ran out of kerosene. There's a phrase for it, I don't know if it's Deutsches Messuna or whatever it is, but I can only imagine somebody will say, well, the story was doing all right until Goebbels podcast. Why did we have to have Goebbels? This author will not be doing any sequels to Look Who's Back, but it makes me wonder. There's potential for this satire to continue, but in a way, it doesn't need to, does it? Now, admittedly, it is preoccupied with German culture as it is today, but German culture is like our culture and the like. There's a infusion of Americanism in it, and also just the way media and this obsession of celebrity and status and social media is. And after Hitler, he doesn't know what the internet is, but he looks online and he sees things about the war and whatnot. Now, I would have thought by April 30th, when he shot himself, he knew that it all was lost. I would have thought he would know the state of play on the front, and yet he seems partially surprised that Germany has lost the war. So maybe Hitler really did believe to the end that deliverance for Germany was at hand. However, it goes on and on. They end up meeting people from the TV company, because everyone thinks he's comedian Stromberg or something, or like a comedian called Stromberg, and they say, they interview him and stuff, and he just goes on, this guy's got a Polish name, he goes, what do you know about Poland? And the guy's like, well, it was invaded in 1939, the capital Warsaw was divided by the Russians, and Hitler's like, no, what do you know about Poland? What do you know about its culture and stuff? So here's Hitler. I'll stress that a couple of times, because none of them are well, he's a lunatic and all this stuff, and when he gets a secretary and they need to do legal paperwork, she's like, what's your name? And he goes, Adolf Hitler. And she goes, seriously? And he goes, no, yes it is, it's Hitler. And he's like, well, that's not going to get through the legal department and all this stuff. And then there's this meeting with all these TV bigwigs, and quite honestly, I don't know if I assume the author did it on purpose. Even I'm flaming wound up, well, not wound up, just not, they're annoying characters, really. They don't treat, they think he is a joke. Now this is the complexity of this book, is that we're laughing at Hitler and we're laughing at ourselves in a way, and he's using Hitler to shine a light on things. And Hitler's just such a thorny issue. When Downfall came out, most of the broadsheets were drowning in articles written about, should we be doing this about Hitler, should we be looking at Hitler like this, should we be making him human? Well, whether we like it or not, he was a human being, an awful human being, but he was a living, breathing human being who did not every day spend all day frothing at the mouth, going into rages. And merely towards the end of his life, it didn't take much. But there's a caricature. Bruno Gans's portrayal is a rounded portrayal. Doesn't make me sympathise with him, but you watch it and go, well, he looks he has normal moments, but he's otherwise a flaming loon who's massacring the people. As the book goes, Hitler becomes a media celebrity. His TV set is mocked up like the Wall Slayer, and there's a fake ticking suitcase or whatever, and he gets beaten up in Munich when he goes back to his old haunt. And there's all this other stuff that by the end of it, you get the impression he's now on the ascendancy to not just being a media celebrity, but taking Germany, getting into bound Germany. And the book sort of suggests that somebody, it's entirely possible for this to happen. Not populism as such, but Hitler suddenly becomes he's on Twitter and stuff. And society now is that way. And I don't think there's a way back, unless we had a pandemic that was a lot worse, that not like the Black Death that sort of halved Europe, but something like if Ebola had actually gotten worse, because Ebola scares me more than most coronavirus, if it became over here anyway. But the Spanish flu it was the last bad, really seriously bad, and it killed many, many, many more than corona has. That is not to take anything away from corona, but what corona has caused. But we're just going on this upward escalation. When I say escalation, well, we have to be number one on things. We have to be a YouTube influencer, like you see in the trending list, and we have to be this, that, and the other. Twitter, get Instagram, whatever, followers and likes and all the rest of it. Last week in Portsmouth, or Southsea to be technical, somebody was attacked on the common. There's a bunch of kids from the sounds of it, or some such the who's and why's are not important, but police said they wanted to speak to 3 men who witnessed it, and the pictures of the 3 men each have mobile phones in their hands filming it whilst laughing. And it's like, we now have to film everything. We now have to... I mean, I was in Victoria Station week before lockdown, and with a couple of other guides. We had a pint. They wanted donuts from the Krispy Kreme, and I heard shouting. I said, "What the hell was that?" And they said, "Go on, Matt, have a look." So I toddled into the thing thinking, get straight out. And there was a guy being restrained on the floor, and I walked straight out. The guys wanted to have a look, and I'm like, "Look, come on, he's just leave it." And there was just there was people just filming him. So the book sort of scratches, and it's hilarious. And bearing in mind it's translated from the German, so if I spoke German fluently, I would have sought out the German edition. And he goes to what passes as the Nazis nowadays, the MPD as it is in this book. If this book had been written a couple of years later, it would have been intriguing what he thought of the AFD. And one of the most intriguing moments is when they have a meeting later in the book, and he suddenly gets carried away by sort of like euphoria of good TV ratings or whatever, and it ends with him going, he just whips himself into a classic hit. Well, not rate, he's euphoric, so he just gets himself up there, and then there's a silence, and they all see-car him without irony or humour. And as a historian, the intriguing thing about the book as well is that not once does anyone actually go to him, "My God, you are Adolf Hitler." He is Hitler. We know he's Hitler. But everyone thinks he's a comedian or impersonator or somebody who looks the exact spit image. There's no one that sort of grabs him by the arm and goes, "My God, you're Hitler, we should trial you." Now, apparently, when they did the film version of this, which I'm thinking about finding one of these days or not. I mean, I like the book. I don't want to watch the film in case it hasn't sort of done things right. Well, made you feel. But there's a lot of they went all over Germany filming some of the scenes so that they could have Hitler, the actor playing Hitler, with people, everyday people. And it was like what Sacha Baron Cohen had done in his films and stuff. And it was surprising, apparently, the amount of everyday Germans that were saying things like the immigrants and the state of the country is bad and we're not allowed to say this and the other, and somebody said that immigrants are bringing down the IQ of the country and all the rest of it. And they were saying this unprompted, and when there was an actor, part of the cast, who is against Hitler or something, expressing views, the actor playing Hitler said for the film, to these everyday youths, beat him up kind of thing, and they did, and they had to pull them apart. So it's a curious thing using Hitler to look at ourselves. But sometimes something like this works. Like alternate history is a finite, like Fatherland in life, for its slight inaccuracies on how things could have gone to lead to the scenario. I mean, it's debatable whether something like Heydrich's death would have Heydrich's survival, could have changed things or be the point of divergence and whatever. It sort of was showing about how the European Union was growing, and it mentioned how Germany under Hitler in '64 was the heart of it, the driving force, and Germany is the driving force of the EU even now, and it looks like they're going to come out of this recession economically better, quicker than the rest of us. So it's a good book if you can get hold of it. I would say go to the library, but my library, if it's any indication elsewhere, you can't make reservations. I mean, I returned my books and I got told there was 72 hours quarantine. I never thought I'd hit that sentence in a library, or outside of a library because I wasn't allowed in. So there you go, from a warm... This may as well be a bunker what I'm living in, honestly. And downstairs are kicking off. So check it out. I think you can probably read it online if you want to somehow, if Kindle. And don't say I don't warn you.